Hello, sorcerers. Josh here, and today I want to talk about the top 8 decks at Gencon. And not just what cards compose those decks, but the market value of those cards, because I have questions. So, before we get started, I want to say a big thank you to Golden Eagle Cards for taking the time to post all those decks for all of us to see, and then the analysis that they provided later. That actually inspired me to make this video, because while he talked about how many cards were in the decks and the analysis of that, which I thought was fantastic, it didn't really relate it to the market value of the cards, which is where I am wondering what's going on. So just kind of as a quick rundown, specifically Earthquake. Earthquake was in 2 copies of Earthquake were in the top, were included in each of the top 4 decks. And then decks that finished 5th through 8, 2 of those decks also ran 2 copies of Earthquake. So of the top 6 of the top 8 decks had 2 copies of Earthquake in them. Then you have the example of Pillar of Zeros. Pillar was in 7 of the top 8 decks, the 1 copy that they were allowed to have. Then you also had Sinkhole. Sinkhole was in 5 of the top 8 decks, 2 copies. Okay. So we look at that and we say, all right, well, that means those cards should have some pretty significant value, right? Well, as it turns out, Earthquake's only $5 a card right now. Granted, it's an elite, so it should be worth a little bit less. But then you have Pillar at 16. All right, it's a unique. 16 is pretty good for a unique, actually, right now. And then you've got Sinkhole at $1.50. Now, it is in the pre-con decks, so that probably plays into this a little bit. But here's the thing. When we then go back and look at, let's face it, the big cards, the cards that we know that are holding the higher values, the stones and the cores, they're worth a lot more. Right now, Philosopher's Stone, $100, $110. Any one of the cores, you're looking at $40. And yet, those cards, there was a single core in the top 4 decks. A single ruby core. When we expand it to the top 8 decks, we end up with 3 stones and then basically 6 cores in total of various types. And yet those cards are holding a much higher value than the cards that are actually seeing use. Now, because the cores and the stone are uniques, we can say, well, that is going to account for some of the difference. But given that Earthquake and Sinkhole showed up in so many of the decks, and Pillar, why are those cards not holding a higher value? And that's what I don't understand, especially in the case of Pillar. It seems like everyone wants to use Pillar. It's great against Death Speaker, even though Death Speaker really didn't make a great showing at Gen Con. But it's also nice to have that little bit of life gain. So if you're playing Earth, it's almost a no-brainer to just include Pillar. Yet, it's $16 right now. Why is it only $16? Why is it not carrying that $40 premium that the cores are carrying, especially when it appears that we have seen a lot less use at Gen Con, showing that they're not necessary, which a lot of people have argued, and I agree. You don't have to have stones to play this game or cores. You just don't. You can make really good competitive decks without those cards. But I just think it's very interesting that right now, we just had Gen Con, this major event, and those cards the stone and the cores were just not present that much in the top 8. And it makes me wonder, if that's the case, why is the market not showing that? Now, cores used to be 60, we're down to 40. So, but some of that's also to do with kind of the lull in the summer, the lull that I've talked about previously that I think that Sorcery will have, as we do this once a year release. That's going to happen. We're going to have that lull where the prices come down. But even then, it seems to me that if the cores are going to stay at 40, Pillar should definitely be moving up to meet that amount, because it is showing up in every deck. Everyone's using Pillar. And in the case of Earthquake and Sinkhole, those cards also are seeing tons and tons of play. Now, they are elites, so they're not going to hit that $40 mark. But why isn't Earthquake $10 or $15? Why aren't Sinkholes the same way? Well, in Sinkhole's case, we might be able to say it should be a little bit less. It's in the pre-con, right? So it's easier to get a hold of the Sinkhole. But still, shouldn't it be a $7 to $8 card? I don't know. But just when I look at those values, it is really making me question what is going on. What is keeping the cores and the stone at this higher price if the competitive decks that we're now seeing coming out of Gencon don't really have those cards, or at least have very many of them? Now, maybe the market just hasn't had time to catch up, but I don't think that's the case. Because quite honestly, I think the stone and the core are always going to hold that higher value just because of what people consider them to be, right? The Alchemy 9, these are the cards that you're going to want to have. Also, eventually we're going to get all these new cards in Arthurian Legends and all the future sets that come along, and obviously the ramp that those cards provide is going to be critical to a lot of new deck types that we have yet to even imagine. But still, it makes me wonder, why do these other cards that are clearly being used a ton, why are they not seeing at least a drift up in value? Why is Earthquake not moving up into that $10 range? Why is it just holding there at $5? Now, it could just be that at the end of the day, player base and supply, there's plenty to go around. So we just don't have the player base yet to move the market price of some of these elites up that are seeing a lot of play. Maybe that's the case. And if it is, fine. But it really makes me wonder, especially as we approach Arthurian Legends and we see this player base expand, are cards like Earthquake and Sinkhole and the Pillar going to start seeing substantial price increases? It seems likely to me, especially with Pillar. It's a unique, as far as we know, there aren't any reprints in Arthurian Legends. There's rumor of it, but we don't think there are. Or, well, maybe I shouldn't say we, but a lot of people don't think there are reprints. And let's assume there are no reprints. Then the Pillar is going to be something that everyone's going to want, assuming that it still stays relevant, and it probably will. Certainly Earthquake will. There's no doubt that Earthquake will stay relevant in this game unless something just happens to Earth where it's totally trash, and I can't see that coming along. So that's kind of where I'm at, is where are we going to stay at this market? You know, are we going to start seeing these cards that were so prevalent in all the top 8 Gencon decks? Are we finally going to start seeing some market moves where those cards are finally going to start moving up a little bit? And honestly, I think that those cards probably should be higher in value. Now, I'm not talking $20 or $30 for an Earthquake, but certainly I think that the $10 to $15 range is probably a very justifiable price for that card. But it all comes down to player base. So, if you right now are building sets or doing things, I would recommend snagging a lot of these top cards from the Gencon decks. Pull them up. Look at the elites. Some of these things you can get for next to nothing. Sinkhole right now is $150. Make sure you've got a pair. Heck, if you like to build multiple decks, make sure you've got 6 or 8 of the things. So that way you can use them as you see fit. But right now, we are in a place where I don't think the market has caught up to the excitement that we saw at Gencon. So right now is your chance to get these cards and get them cheap before things go a little bit nuts with the release of Arthurian Legends. At least we all hope it goes nuts. I hope to see the player base quintuple. Now, that probably is asking a little bit too much, but I'd really like to see it. So, those are my thoughts. Again, it's just some initial thoughts that I really had when I was looking at these decks and looking at the prices, because I do look at the prices quite a bit, and I was like, well, that's just interesting. So tell me what you think in the comments below if you'd like. And other than that, to wrap up the video, there was one thing I meant to do in my last video that I didn't do. This little thing that's been sitting here on the end of my shelf. So I picked this up recently, very excited to add this to the shelf behind me here. I was just going to add this while everyone was kind of watching, kind of at the end here. I won this through an auction on Collector Art House. Very excited for this. Very, very excited. So another artist proof from Marta Molina. Crater Eyes, obviously. Beautiful card. I love this one. And we are going to be adding it to the collection. It's actually going to be taking this place right here. That little stand is for it. Card came out of there. I removed it. So I'll probably just switch stuff out, you know, every now and again. So keep your eye out, because I might not take the time to actually do a video about it. I'm just going to do these things and put them up. That's going to go in this little case right here. And then we'll close everything out, and it'll be a great day. So let's go ahead and pop it in. Oh, hold on. Maybe. Oh, the fun of getting an artist proof out of its case. There we go. And in. And lock it in. And there it is, folks. Gonna go in the case. Beautiful card. Absolutely love it. Sorry I'm getting a lot of glare there. But gonna take place right here. And there it is. Very happy to have that one. I'll see y'all later. Have fun. Contest the realm.